I was 8 years old when my mother first told me I shouldn't be in photos. It was the summer my front teeth were still arguing about where to live in my mouth. And my hair refused to obey the plastic headbands she bought in bulk at the discount store. We were at my cousin Samir's birthday party, paper lanterns strung across the yard. A cake iced in blue waves because he wanted to be an oceanographer that weekend. Everyone was gathering by the fence for a family picture. "Stand by me," I whispered to my little sister Zara, who was 5 and sticky with frosting, her cheeks plentiful and cherubic, her dress a cloud of pink tulle. She was good at photos, born with that instinct to turn her chin and find the light. She didn't try. It came to her like the dimple in her right cheek and the way she made adults laugh by mispronouncing complicated words on purpose. But before I reached her, my mother's fingers gripped my shoulder. "Maya," she said, smiling for the guests and shaping her voice so it wouldn't look like it sounded. "Why don't you hold the plates? We can't have spills near the camera." "I want to be in the picture," I said. I kept my voice small because I had learned that sound could trigger storms. "You can be in the next one," she promised, as if that were a real thing. "Run along. Run along." I can still feel the paper plates biting crescents into my palms while the grown-ups squeezed together and counted down. Zara stood in front, her pink fluff turned to the sun. Our father's hand draped casually over Mom's shoulder. The flash popped. They laughed, and I pretended something important was happening at the drinks table. There was no next picture. That was how it started. Simple moments trimmed like loose threads. Little omissions you barely register because the fabric still looks intact. A missing smile here, a cropped elbow there. Then, one day, you realize you live in a house of altered edges. "Maya has such a pretty voice," Auntie Sarah once said when I sang to the radio while clearing the dinner plates. My mother replied, sipping water. If only she had her sister's face. She didn't say it unkindly. She said it like the weather. In pictures, Zara's face was a sunflower. Mine, according to my mother, was all angles, nose too long, eyes too large, a mouth that stayed straight unless I forced it. I looked serious, which my mother pronounced as a flaw. "Lighten your eyes, lift your cheeks," she'd instruct whenever a camera appeared. "Smile like you want to be here." I did want to be there. That seemed like the strangest part. As we grew, the rules hardened. Family photos after Eid. Maya stands off to the side, taking a candid of the cousins. Wedding entrance shots? Maya holds the extra bouquet and waits out of frame. The logic mutated each year. There wasn't enough space. The photographer needed a focal point. The color balance would be better if Zara stood centered alone. "You're so good with the camera," Mom told me when I was 11. Pressing her sleek phone into my hand at Grandma's 70th. "Get the angles I like. Okay?" She explained her angles with conviction. The tilt here, the shoulder there, the smile that showed teeth but not gums. She looked at the screen and nodded. "Yes, see? When I am captured right, I look like myself." Who was I when I wasn't captured at all? In the back of every album where the paper went damp with humidity, there was always a pocket of negatives and receipts I studied like codes. I memorized the dates. I tracked the faces that made the cut and those that didn't. The weed whacker. Hum of my father's old desktop as I scanned photographs into a cheap printer is the soundtrack of my adolescence. I taught myself exposure, the mechanics of white balance. How to find the light even in our house where the heavy curtains were always drawn shut because my mother believed the sun was an enemy. Once it turned your skin a shade darker. "You don't want to get too dark," she warned me each June. "You have to work with what you're given." I'd look down at my arms and feel like a stranger in a borrowed body. If I stood beside my mother and Zara in the mirror, I was neither a copy nor an echo of them. Mom's features were gentle small nose, almond eyes that narrowed sweetly when she smiled. Cheeks that stayed full no matter how many green smoothies she replaced dinner with. Zara inherited all of it, and the gentle charm besides. She was a storybook illustration. I was pencil lines that never quite connected. "Don't hunch." My father would murmur to me as if posture could erase genetics. He was quiet, a man who counted things steps, breaths, expenses. He loved quietly and observed loudly. His eyes saw everything and revealed almost nothing. Still, he saw me. Not the way I wanted to be seen, but as something present, a fact in the room. On nights when I stayed up late studying and the hallway light bled under my door, he'd knock once, slide a plate of cut apples onto my desk, and leave. No moral attached. No advice, just fuel. Zara and I shared a room until she was 12 when Mom declared that a young lady needed her own space. My half of the closet stayed a battlefield of secondhand hoodies and dresses that never fit quite right. Her half was a curated boutique in pastel. I didn't mind, not really. I preferred spending time in the basement with the boxes of family artifacts, especially the Campbell's soup box that held my grandfather's camera. It was a little brick of metal, heavy with history. The leather strap cracked like a desert. The first time I lifted it to my eye and heard the crisp mechanical shutter, something inside me softened. This, I thought, this is where I don't have to be seen to exist. I became the family's unofficial documentarian. I caught Auntie Nesrine's laugh as it burst, Uncle Javed's hands as they told stories, Zara's eyelashes when they curved like questions over birthday candles. People started praising the albums not for who was in them, but for how alive they felt. Maya has an eye, my grandfather would say, winking at me like we shared a conspiracy. It felt like winning without being allowed on the field. Then, when I was 15, something happened that pressed a thumb into the clay of me and left a permanent dent. It was the summer we visited the lake with our cousins, and everyone insisted on a group selfie on the dock before sunset. I handed my phone to Samir's girlfriend and moved toward the center. My mother's fingers found my elbow and directed me to the edge. "You'll block Sarah," she stage whispered. "Just lean out a little, okay? We want the sky." I leaned out. The dock tilted. I fell in. The water wasn't deep, but shock flicked panic through my limbs. I swallowed lake and shame in one gulp. When I surfaced, everyone was laughing with that high. Startled sound people make when something is almost tragic but ends up comedic. My mother's laugh was tight, like a zipper stuck. "Maya," she called, extending a hand she didn't actually expect me to take. "Honestly, you make everything a scene. A scene. A scene." I hated that word for years after. It made every feeling I had suspect, every protestation performative. Am I a scene if no one watches me? I would write in my journal. Am I a scene if I happen in the dark? I took that question with me when I left for university 2 hours away. But it felt like a different planet without the rules of light and cropping. In my dorm, I hung my own pictures. I printed a series of self-portraits where I sliced my face into pieces mouth in one frame, an eye in another, hand pressed against glass in a third, and arranged them like a puzzle. When my roommate Jenna asked what they meant, I told her they were about being the negative space in your own family photo. "You talk like a poet," she said, stabbing a strawberry with her fork. "No," I replied. "I talk like a witness. I studied media arts, took every photography course offered, volunteered to assist at events and galleries. I learned more from Professor Caldwell than anyone else." She didn't smile when she complimented you, which made her praise feel surgical and honest. "You obsess," she told me once, tapping a contact sheet of my latest series. "That's your gift. You don't call something done because it resembles the thing. You keep looking until it reveals itself." At home, Mom called me every Sunday to tell me about Zara's pageant trophies, Zara's modeling audition, Zara's almost landed shampoo commercial. "Your sister photographs beautifully," she'd say without malice, because malice would have required acknowledging me. "We found a professional who understands her best side." Then, as an afterthought, "How are classes?" "I'm working with a gallery," I'd say. Or, "My professor chose me to lead the installation team." Or, eventually, "I got a small grant to create a series about family archives." "Ah," she replied, the word shaped like a bubble that never popped. Well, don't get too busy to come home for Zara's engagement party in the spring. Engagement. I sat up. To who? "You met him at the Eid dinner," she said. "Rayon the banker with the generous hair. He's polite enough. And his mother is a saint." Her voice warmed. Mom loved a mother who loved a daughter for the same reason. Reflections. I pulled up his picture on social media later. Rayan, thick hair, expensive watch, eyes that smiled more than his mouth did. Zara's caption was a quote about stars aligning. In the photo, my mother stood between them like the director at a film wrap. I told myself the engagement party would be fine. I told myself grown-up me would shield girl me from the old familiar ache. But 2 days after Mom's call, she texted our family group thread a list titled Photo Plan. It was a spreadsheet of names and combinations: Zara with fiance, Zara with parents, Zara with maternal grandparents, Zara and Rayan with his parents, Rayan with brothers, cousins by age group, aunts in jewel tones, uncles in navy, all grandchildren except me. We live in a time of modern miracles. You can block a person's face in photos with a gentle blur. The way my mother excluded me was more analog, which somehow made it worse. It was the old knife sharpened anew. I scrolled through the spreadsheet once more, hunting for my name like a detective searching a missing person case for signs of life. In the additional shots section, I found it at last: Maya candidates. My throat made a sound like creaking door hinges. One typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on a simple noted. Jenna found me at my desk that night, the lamp haloing my notes and the spreadsheet printed and scribbled on with red pen. "What are you doing?" "Planning," I said. "What hurts?" "Being erased with manners." She sat on my bed without asking. The only friend I'd ever had who could occupy a room with me without extracting more air. "What do you want to do?" "I want to build a frame big enough that she can't crop me out," I said. I surprised myself with the violence of the thought. I want to finally be the subject. "You're a photographer," Jenna said slowly. "Make a scene." I laughed, ugly and sudden. "She says that like it's a crime." "Then commit it with style." I turned the words over in my head for days, like a rock I couldn't stop worrying at. I went to Professor Caldwell's office hours under the pretense of asking about the grant budget and asked her instead about public art. "Public art," she repeated, leaning back in her chair. "The kind that can't be ignored." "Exactly. The kind that's uncroppable." I smiled, and it felt reckless on my face. She set her pen down. "Who are you trying to confront, Maya?" "My mother," I said. It wasn't the first time I'd told a near stranger something private because the telling made it real. She didn't flinch. "You're old enough to know that confronting is only half the project. The other half is holding. Can you hold what comes out?" I didn't know then whether I could. I only knew I was tired of living like spilled ink present, but always cleaned up. A week later, Grandpa had a scare. His heart stuttered during the afternoon news, and the hospital kept him overnight for observation. I visited him with my father and brought a small disposable camera for him because he always loved gadgets. He squeezed my hand with a papery grip and said, "Chipmunk, I'm not leaving yet. I still have stories to be photographed." He called me Chipmunk because of the way my cheeks puffed when I concentrated. Maybe I did get something from my mother after all. "When you're ready," he added, his eyes glinting, "open that shoebox at the bottom of my closet. There's something in there for you." "What is it?" I asked. A reminder was all he said. Back at the house, I found the shoebox cradled in dust. Inside was a bundle of old film canisters wrapped in a scarf, a handwritten note with names and dates, and a small polished silver locket I'd never seen our family wear. The locket clicked open to reveal a tiny photo, a girl with serious eyes and a crooked mouth. The image was worn to a blur, but she looked enough like me that my heart did a strange flip. Underneath there was a recent envelope addressed to me in my grandfather's shaky script. I slid it open with my thumbnail and slid out a single item, a glossy business card with raised letters. It wasn't his. It belonged to someone else, someone whose name I'd only ever heard my mother spit like a seed she wanted out of her mouth as quickly as possible. I read the card once, twice, then again as if repetition could change it. The name hummed in my fingertips. That night my father knocked on my door and stepped in without waiting, something he never did. His hands trembled around a mug of tea. "Your mother is stressed," he said, the way someone might say, "There's a storm coming." "I know," I said. I tucked the envelope under a stack of photo magazines, like it could burn a hole through them if left exposed. She wants the engagement to be perfect. Perfection is a picture you take once and spend the rest of your life trying to live inside, he said quietly. It was the kind of thing he only said when he thought no one would tell on him. He set the mug on my nightstand. Be gentle. Dad, I asked softly, why won't she let me be in the photos? He lifted his eyes to mine. They were tired, those eyes. They had read every page of our family and never told me what happened at the end. He took a breath, held it, let it go. Some stories, he said, she believes look better if certain pages are glued together, and mine is one of those pages. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The engagement invitations went out a month later, elegant script on cream card, gold edges that caught the light. Mom sent me a message the same day with a cropped screenshot of the timeline. Arrive early for dress rehearsal. Hair and makeup for you at 2 p.m. I booked a simple look. Remember, you'll be handling candids. I stared at the word simple. I don't know why that was the straw. Maybe because it suggested my face needed to be minimized to be tolerable, like noise reduced in post. Maybe because I could hear her tone in the text. Polite tyranny. I called Jenna. I'm going to be in the photos, I said. And if she tries to crop me, the frame will be bigger than her scissors. How? She asked. Practical as always. The surprise guest, I told her, and when she asked who, I swallowed the answer. Some things could only be said out loud once you're wearing the right shoes. I started planning in secret. Not the old kind of secrets, the small ones that protected me from hurt. These were big-walled, sturdy secrets built to protect a new version of me I was still getting to know. I made appointments. I sent emails. I took the bus to the people who could turn an idea into something that could stand on a stage and not tremble. I took more self-portraits, too. Not the cutting kind. I photographed the parts of me I'd learned to hide. The half-moon scar on my chin from falling off my bike at 9. The curve of my nose profile that my mother called too much. The serious way my eyes set into my face like they were settling a debate. I printed them large and taped them to my wall in a grid. I practiced smiling without apology. Some nights, I didn't sleep. I stared at the photographs until my own face became landscape, hills, and line and shadow. One evening, while I adjusted the placement of a print, Zara knocked and slipped into my dorm without waiting for permission because she had never needed it from me. Don't look at my hair, she said before I could speak, tugging a beanie over a mess of curls. I'm trying growing out bangs. Or trying to become a person who can grow out bangs without crying. I hugged her because whatever else was complicated in our family, my love for Zara was simple. What are you doing here? She made a face. Mom sent me to make sure you're okay. She looked around, taking in the spread of photos, the mess of notes, the small mountain of thrifted frames I'd piled in a corner. She said you've been fixated and that you might perform. I snorted. Perform what? My feelings. I don't know, Zara said earnestly, but she's been extra. Like, extra, extra. She sat on my bed and leaned back against the wall, looking up at my photographs. Is that your face? It's pieces of me, I said. I'm trying to see it all at once. She nodded slowly. You're beautiful, you know, she said. Not like a compliment to Cash, but like a fact the world didn't need to approve. When I was little, I wanted your eyes because they look like they've read a lot. I blinked. Thanks. You're welcome. She picked at a thread on her sleeve. Can I tell you something without you using it against me in your memoir later? Maybe, she laughed. Rayan's mother made me practice holding a teacup for 45 minutes yesterday so I would look regal in photos. My mouth fell open. 45, she said. I slouch into the cup. Zara mimed its chin down, shoulders rounded, cup near her chest like a confession. I didn't know one could slouch into liquid, but apparently it's a family trait. Her smile pulled thin. I thought Mom would defend me, but she just nodded and said, We'll work on it. We'll work on it. I recognized the phrase. It was a cousin to You'll Ruin It. It lived in the same house as Simple Look. Zara looked up at my favorite self-portrait, the one where I faced the camera to dawn. No expression, unflinching. Sometimes I think the pictures swallow me, she whispered. Like I get smaller each time. I wanted to say something wise, something to make this not about me for once. You don't have to stand still to be loved, I said. It sounded like it belonged in a different kind of book, the kind my mother didn't have. You don't have to be composed to be chosen. She exhaled. Will you be at the engagement? Of course. In like the pictures. I smiled. In all the pictures that matter. She narrowed her eyes in suspicion and then shook her head, amused. You're up to something? Always. She reached for a frame on my desk and turned it over. There was a time I would have hidden it from her, a card with a name printed in white over matte black. She didn't ask about it. She respected secrets like you respect a closed door in a thunderstorm. When she left that night, my room felt both emptier and more anchored. I stood in front of my wall of selves and felt a faint, bright thread tug me forward. The day before the engagement, Mom messaged me the final itinerary and a crisp warning. Please don't complicate anything tomorrow. This is your sister's day. I imagined her writing it while adjusting her earrings in the mirror, the way she always did two things at once when nervous. The house of altered edges was humming, every glued page threatening to peel. I sent back a thumbs up because sometimes a tiny, stupid symbol is the only thing between a war and a stalemate. That night I packed my bag with strange items, a small portable projector, a velvet box I'd retrieved from a different apartment across town, carefully labeled envelopes, an old locket strung on a black ribbon, and a set of prints wrapped in tissue paper. I slipped in my grandfather's disposable camera, too, because superstition is its own language. Then I slept. I slept like the body does when it finally believes it will be witnessed. Morning came slow and gold through my dorm blinds. I showered, braided my hair into something proud. Put on the dress I'd chosen because it made me feel like a piano key, simple but central. I painted my mouth with the lipstick Jenna had insisted I buy on a day when I'd claimed I wasn't that kind of girl. I looked at myself in the mirror and said out loud, I am not extra. I am exact. The words felt like a key turning. Before I left, I tucked the business card into my wallet, my talisman, my evidence, my invitation to a story that no longer wanted its pages glued shut. As I locked the door, I whispered thanks to the older versions of me who had handed plates while others posed. And to the girl who had fallen off the dock and learned how to swim without waiting for a hand. On the train, I practiced the speech I might never give. The one that began with, my mother said I shouldn't be in photos, and ended, so I arrived with a surprise guest. The words rolled inside me like tide. I didn't know exactly how the day would unfurl. I only knew this. Whatever frame my mother had built to hold the world, I was stepping outside of it. And I would not be erased with manners again. The engagement party was scheduled for a Saturday evening in early spring. It's a kind of day where the air can't decide if it belongs to winter or summer. The sky carried both chill and promise, and as I rode in the car with my father, I kept my hands folded in my lap like I was holding back an earthquake. Mom had already been at the banquet hall since morning, supervising the decorators like a director orchestrating her magnum opus. She'd chosen the hall for its chandeliers, its cream walls, and the way the carpet matched the gold trim on Zara's gown. Every detail mattered to her because, in her mind, every detail was a reflection of her. When we arrived, the place glowed. White roses spiraled up columns, fairy lights twinkled like constellations above. And the scent of cardamom tea floated across the entrance. A red carpet stretched down the hall as though Zara and Rayan were royalty. I carried my bag close to my body, the strap digging into my shoulder, guarding the items inside as if they were dynamite. My father held the door for me, gave a slight nod, and whispered, "Be calm." His words weren't a warning. They were a shield he was trying to hand me. Inside, Zara stood at the center of the room in her seafoam green lehenga, sparkling like a dream. She was luminous, her smile easy, her hair in perfect curls pinned with pearls. Guests crowded around her, cooing compliments, showering her with hugs and blessings. Mom hovered near, adjusting Zara's dupatta every few minutes, making sure each fold lay just right. When Mom saw me, her smile thinned. She swept her eyes from my dress to my braid, lingering on the lipstick as if I'd committed an offense. "You're late," she said softly through her teeth. "I'm on time," I replied. "You were supposed to be here 2 hours ago for hair and makeup. I did my own." She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes cool, calculating. "It's Zara's day. Please, Maya, don't complicate anything." Her words weren't just caution, they were dismissal. She wanted me to know I was on thin ice before I even entered the room. I pressed my lips together, tasting the defiance of the lipstick I'd chosen, and gave a polite nod. "Understood?" The photographer arrived soon after. He was tall, efficient, and brisk, the type of man who could herd people into groups like cattle without making them complain. Mom immediately pulled him aside to review the photo plan. I watched her point to the spreadsheet she'd printed, explaining who should be grouped together in what order, and which shots wouldn't be necessary. I already knew which ones she meant. The first round of photos was family only. Zara with Rayan. Zara with mom and dad. Rayan with his brothers. Aunts and uncles in color-coordinated clusters. Every time I stepped forward, Mom's hand found my wrist or elbow, guiding me just slightly to the side. "Why don't you let the others take this one?" she whispered. "It's fine if you wait for the next group, Maya. Maybe you can capture some candidates from there." The words slid off her tongue smoothly, practiced, like a script she'd rehearsed for years. And like an obedient understudy, I obeyed, stepping aside, smiling tightly, pretending not to hear the echo of my childhood in her tone. I watched through the lens of my own camera as my family assembled into polished tableau. Zara stood like a jewel at the center of every frame, her smile wide, her posture graceful. My parents beamed. Guests clapped. And I stayed behind the curtain, invisible, recording what was supposed to be the happiest day of our family's life. Each click of the professional photographer's camera was like a hammer driving a nail deeper into me. Then came the moment that stung most. The MC announced it was time for the siblings' photo. A cheer rippled through the hall. Cousins rushed to the stage, laughing, linking arms. Zara's younger cousins tugged her hands and begged to stand beside her. I stepped forward, heart thrumming, telling myself this was mine. This was the picture that couldn't happen without me. But when I tried to climb onto the stage, Mom appeared like a shadow. "There are too many already," she said with a tight smile, blocking me with her body. "It will look crowded. Why don't you capture this one from the front?" For a second, I thought I misheard her. I blinked. "I'm her sister." "Yeah," she said lightly, "but let's let the little ones have the spotlight. You understand, don't you?" Her words were sugar on poison. Guests around us glanced awkwardly, unsure whether to intervene. Zara looked at me from the stage, her smile faltering. I could see the guilt flicker in her eyes, but she said nothing, too stunned, too afraid to challenge Mom in front of everyone. I froze. My chest burned. My throat tightened until my voice became a whisper only I could hear. "I'm her sister. I belong there." But instead of climbing onto the stage, I stood rooted as the photographer counted down. 1, 2, 3, smile. The flash went off. The siblings laughed. And I, the actual sibling, stood on the floor, camera in hand, excluded from the memory forever. Laughter filled the hall. The cousins jumped down, clapping each other on the back. The photographer complimented their smiles. Mom looked radiant, satisfied, and me. I felt like the doc all over again. Like I was leaning too far out, and the whole world had tilted to throw me into cold water. I pressed my camera shutter mechanically, capturing candidates I would never look at again. My face burned, my hands trembled, and I thought, this is it. This is the last time. Because humiliation had a way of hardening into clarity. And as I stood there, erased yet again with manners, my hand brushed the strap of my bag. Inside the locket, the prince and the business card waited. My surprise guest was already on their way. I whispered to myself, just wait. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't ashamed of making a scene. I don't remember the speeches that followed the humiliation. I don't remember the string quartet or the polite laughter at the MC's jokes. All I remember is the thud of my pulse in my ears and the way my hands clung to the strap of my bag like it was a lifeline. I'd lived my entire life being shifted aside, cropped out, erased with courtesy. But that night in that glittering hall filled with chandeliers and roses, something inside me cracked open. I knew I wasn't going to leave as invisible as I had arrived, because my guest was already waiting just outside. Dinner was served, steaming trays of biryani, chicken, korma, and platters of kebabs carried out by staff in crisp uniforms. Guests queued at the buffet, chattering, laughing, clinking glasses. Zara floated from table to table, luminous in her lehenga, accepting compliments like petals falling into her hands. I lingered by the side, my camera in one hand, my bag heavy on the other. I was waiting for the right moment. And then, like fate itself had planned the timing, the MC tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "before dessert, the bride-to-be and her family would like to share a special slideshow of memories." I froze. A slideshow. My mother's idea, no doubt a curated history of Zara's life. Polished, perfect, and of course, absent of me. The lights dimmed. The first image appeared on the giant screen. Baby Zara swaddled in a pink blanket. The crowd cooed. Next came Zara at 5, posing with missing teeth. Then Zara at 10, grinning with a science fair ribbon. Then Zara in high school, beaming at prom. Photo after photo, memory after memory, each one carefully chosen. Each one reinforcing the same message. Zara, the golden child, the chosen one, the sun around which the family orbited. And me, nowhere. Not a single shot. I felt the crowd shift as the omission became impossible to ignore. People glanced at me, then at the screen, then back again. I saw the confusion in their eyes. Where was the other daughter? Why wasn't I part of this story? The slideshow ended with applause. Mom stood at the front, radiant, as if she had just orchestrated a masterpiece. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling with pride. "My Zara has always been a gift to us." And that was my breaking point. I stepped forward, my bag in my hand, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might split my ribs. "Actually," I said, my voice louder than I expected, "I brought something too." The room went silent. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. Mom stiffened, her smile freezing into place. "Maya," she hissed under her breath, "sit down." But I didn't. I walked to the stage, my heels clicking like drum beats, and handed the technician a USB stick I'd prepared weeks ago. "Play this," I said. My voice didn't shake. The technician glanced at me, then at the MC, who hesitated. Mom stepped forward, whispering urgently, "No, that won't be necessary." But it was too late. The screen flickered and my slideshow began. The first photo appeared, Zara and me together as children, holding hands in matching dresses. The crowd murmured. The next, me at 8, holding plates at Samir's birthday while the rest of the family posed for the camera. The caption I had added appeared across the bottom. "Some people are left behind the frame." Gasps rippled through the hall. The third, me dripping wet, climbing out of the lake after falling off the dock. The others laughing in the background. Caption: "Sometimes you're told you ruin the picture just by being in it." The fourth, Zara and Mom posing together, radiant, while I stood in the corner blurred, half-cropped. Caption: "Some of us exist only in the margins." The slideshow built in intensity. Photo after photo revealing the quiet cruelty of being erased, of being excluded, of being made invisible. Each caption cut deeper. Each image exposed the truth my mother had spent years hiding. And then the final image appeared. It wasn't Zara. It wasn't Mom. It was me. A large full-frame portrait of my face, the self-portrait I had taken in my dorm, staring straight into the lens, unflinching, unapologetic. The caption beneath it read, "I am here, and I will not be cropped out again." The hall was silent. Not a cough, not a whisper. Just the image of me filling every inch of the screen. And then came the surprise, because I hadn't come alone. From the back of the hall, a voice broke the silence. "She has always been here." Heads turned. My guest walked forward, each step measured, echoing in the stunned quiet. It was a woman in her late 40s, her hair streaked with silver, her eyes sharp and piercing. She looked familiar yet strange, like a memory I'd never been allowed to have. Around her neck hung a locket, the twin of the one I had found in my grandfather's shoebox. Gasps spread like wildfire. Some guests whispered names. Others simply stared confused. My mother's face drained of color. The woman stopped at the front, turned to the crowd, and said clearly, "My name is Layla. I am Maya's and her mother's estranged sister, and I've been kept out of this family's photos just like her." The hall erupted. Aunts clutched their pearls. Cousins whispered frantically. Guests exchanged shocked looks. I stood frozen, heart hammering, watching my mother's carefully constructed world fracture in real time. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the secret she'd buried, the sister she'd cut out of her life, erased from our history, just as she'd erased me from our photos. And now, here she was, standing in front of everyone, alive, undeniable, holding proof around her neck in the form of the matching locket. The room spun with questions, accusations, gasps. Zara looked between Mom and me, her face pale, her lips parted as if she couldn't breathe. And I thought, this is it. This is the revelation. This is the page she glued shut, finally torn open. The moment my Aunt Lalou spoke her name aloud, the banquet hall transformed. What had been a polished, glittering engagement party dissolved into a courtroom of whispers and stares. People leaned across tables, murmuring like ripples spreading across a pond. Cameras clicked, not the professional photographer this time, but the guests' phones, eager to capture the scandal unfolding in real time. And at the epicenter of it all stood my mother, frozen, her perfect smile shattered. "Layla," she said at last, her voice brittle, sharp as glass. "You have no right to be here." "No, right?" Layla's laugh rang bitter, cutting through the silence. "You cut me out of this family like I was a stain. You ripped me out of photographs, out of memories, out of my own niece's life. And you dare say I have no right?" Gasps spread. Eyes darted between them. I stepped closer, my chest heaving with the weight of years of silence. "You didn't just erase her," I said, my voice trembling but strong. "You erased me, too. All my life, you told me I wasn't meant for the frame, that I ruined pictures, that I was only good enough to hold the plates, to take the candids, to be the shadow behind Zara's light." "Maya, stop," Mom hissed, her eyes wild. "This is your sister's engagement. Don't you dare. Don't I dare?" "What?" My voice cracked like thunder. "Tell the truth. Show them the parts of the story you glued shut." I turned to the crowd, raising my hand toward the screen where my portrait still loomed. "Look at this. Every photo you saw before was curated, designed to make Zara perfect, to make our family perfect. But perfection came at a cost. Me." I gestured toward Layla and her. Layla stepped forward, her locket glinting under the chandeliers. "Do you all know why my sister hates photos so much? Why she controls every angle, every smile? Because she has spent her whole life hiding the truth that she abandoned her own blood." My mother's face blanched. "Enough," she snapped. "No," Layla shot back. "Not enough. You told everyone I was selfish, that I left by choice. But the truth is, you forced me out because I wouldn't play along with your performance. I wouldn't let you crop life into a lie. And when Maya was born, when she inherited my face, you decided you would crop her too." A wave of murmurs crashed across the hall. Guests turned toward me, their expressions shifting, sympathy, anger, disbelief. Zara stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. Her voice trembled, but it carried. "Is it true?" she asked Mom, tears brimming in her eyes. "Is it true you've been erasing Maya because she looks like Aunt Layla?" My mother faltered. For once, she had no polished line, no gentle lie to smooth over the cracks. Her silence was its own confession. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Not just revenge, but justice. I reached into my bag and pulled out the velvet box. The hall seemed to inhale as I opened it. Inside lay a set of large framed prints, my self-portraits. The ones I had taken piece by piece, eyes and mouth and hands stitched into wholeness. I handed them to the photographer. Put these on the easels. He hesitated, then obeyed, setting them up across the front of the stage. The lights illuminated my face from every angle, every imperfection, every truth. I stood among them, surrounded by myself, refusing to be cropped. "This," I said, voice ringing clear, "is who I am. And tonight I refuse to disappear." The hall erupted not in applause, not yet, but in noise. Some clapped softly. Others whispered furiously. A few shook their heads, scandalized, but most simply watched. Watched me standing where I had never been allowed to stand before. Mom's composure cracked entirely. "You've ruined everything," she spat, her voice trembling. This was supposed to be Zara's night. But Zara, sweet, soft Zara, turned on her. Her hands shook, but her words were steady. "No, Mama, you ruined it. By pretending half this family didn't exist. By pretending Maya didn't exist." She looked at me then, her eyes glistening. "You're my sister. You've always been my sister. I should have fought harder for you." Her words pierced me deeper than my mother's cruelty ever had. Because they were real. Because they hurt. And then something remarkable happened. Guests began to rise one by one, two by two. Aunts, cousins, even old family friends. They walked toward me, toward the easels, toward Layla. Some hugged me. Some simply stood near, silent solidarity written across their faces. In the end, it wasn't me who made the scene. It was them. The hall no longer orbited Zara or Mom's curated perfection. It orbited truth. And for the first time, I was at the center. Mom tried one last time to regain control, her voice shrill, desperate. "You don't understand. Photos matter. Appearances matter. Without them, what do we have?" Layla's voice was steady. "Without them, we have honesty. And maybe that's what Maya came to remind us." I raised my chin. I didn't come to ruin the engagement. I came to take my place. To show that erasing people doesn't make them disappear. It only makes the truth louder when it finally breaks free. Silence followed. Heavy, irrevocable. Mom's eyes glistened not with apology. Not yet, but with something close to fear. Because the one thing she'd always dreaded had happened. The illusion shattered, and everyone saw the cracks. And me. I felt taller than I ever had in my life. By the time dessert was served, the party had split into two camps. Those buzzing with gossip and scandal. And those who gravitated toward me and Zara, offering quiet encouragement. The photographs of me remained on display, impossible to ignore, impossible to crop. My mother retreated to a corner, her mask cracked, her empire of appearances collapsing around her. And for once, I didn't feel small in her shadow. I felt free, because the justice I wanted wasn't just her humiliation. It was this, standing visible, undeniable in front of everyone who had once looked past me. And no one, not even my mother, could erase me again. The hall never truly recovered from that night's fracture. Even after the lights brightened, even after dessert trays rolled out with saffron rice pudding and baklava, even after Zara tried her best to move from table to table, laughing too loudly in an attempt to smooth over the cracks, nothing returned to what it had been. Because once the truth has been spoken aloud, once the air has been pierced by revelation, it cannot be unheard. I knew it. My mother knew it. Everyone in that hall knew it. In the days that followed, gossip traveled faster than the invitations ever had. Aunts called cousins, cousins messaged friends, family friends whispered at mosque, neighbors dropped hints across fences. The story spread, how the perfect family had cracks in its frame. How one daughter had been cropped for years. How an estranged sister had walked back into the picture like a ghost resurrected. I stayed quiet. For once, I didn't feel the need to defend or explain myself. The photos, the slideshow, the locket, everything spoke for me, and the silence was strangely powerful. Zara came to see me the very next morning, still in her glittering lehenga, her makeup smudged from tears and fatigue. She sank onto my dorm bed like a child who had run too far. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" "For letting it happen. For never saying anything. For standing in the pictures while you stood behind the camera." She twisted her hands together. I thought Mom knew best. I thought if I stayed perfect, if I played along, it would make her happy. But it just made her crueler. Her words hurt, not because they were untrue, but because I had believed them too once. "You don't owe me an apology," I said gently. "You were a child. Just like me." "But you were my sister," she said fiercely, tears spilling down her cheeks. "And I didn't protect you." I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight. "You don't have to protect me now. Just stand with me." And she did. My father was harder to read. He never called me to scold me, never texted me to explain away the night. Instead, he visited one evening carrying a grocery bag filled with apples. He set them on my table and sat across from me, silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "You were brave." I was angry, I admitted. "Sometimes," he said softly, "those are the same thing." I wanted to ask him why he had never stopped Mom, why he had let her cut me out year after year. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw the answer: fear. His silence had been its own kind of prison. Still, in his quiet way, he gave me what he always had. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a single photograph, one I had never seen before. It was of me, maybe 3 years old, perched on his shoulders, laughing so hard my mouth opened wide. My tiny hands tangled in his hair. "She didn't like this one," he said, voice low. "So I kept it for myself." I held it to my chest, a piece of proof I hadn't even known I needed. And my mother. For weeks, she didn't call, didn't text, didn't even attempt one of her carefully crafted explanations. She pretended, I think, that silence could undo the scene, that if she ignored the wound, it might scar over unnoticed. But then, one Sunday, my phone buzzed. "Come home," the message said. "We need to talk." I didn't go immediately. I waited until I was ready, until my hands no longer shook at the thought of facing her. When I finally stepped through the doorway of our house, she was waiting in the living room, her makeup done, her posture rigid. But her eyes softer than I had ever seen them. "You embarrassed me," she said, her voice brittle. "You erased me," I replied. Her lips pressed tight, her breath uneven. For the first time, I saw her not as the untouchable figure I had feared, but as a woman terrified of her own reflection. "You look like her," she whispered finally, "like Layla. Every time I looked at you, I saw what I lost, what I couldn't forgive." The words landed heavy. It wasn't an apology. Not really. But it was a truth she had kept buried, and hearing it out loud loosened something in me. "I am not her," I said. "I am me. And I deserve to exist in this family as myself." Her eyes glistened. She didn't embrace me. She didn't ask forgiveness. But she nodded once, slow, trembling. For her, maybe that was as close to surrender as she could get. Months passed. The engagement party became legend, a cautionary tale whispered in the community. Zara married Rayan quietly, a smaller ceremony, fewer guests, no elaborate slideshow. I stood beside her in every photo, smiling not perfectly, not posed, but real. Layla stayed in touch. She came over for tea, sometimes awkward, sometimes warm, always curious. We were building something fragile but real, a connection stitched together from years of absence. She told me stories of my mother as a girl, how she used to love painting, how she hated being the shorter sister, how she once dreamed of traveling the world before fear and pride pinned her down. For the first time, I saw my mother not as a tyrant, but as a broken girl who never learned how to forgive. And me. I mounted my photographs in a gallery show at school, the cropped out series. The walls were lined with images of me, of Zara, of family gatherings where I had been excluded, each one paired with captions telling the truth. Visitors lingered. Some cried. Some whispered their own stories of being erased. When I stood at the center of the gallery, surrounded by my work, I felt something I had chased my whole life, but never caught until then, validation. Because visibility wasn't just about being in the frame. It was about being seen, truly, wholly, unapologetically seen. Looking back now, I don't hate my mother. Hate is too small, too easy. I see her as she is. A woman who believed appearances were survival, who thought cropping out flaws could make life perfect. She was wrong. But she was human. I see Zara Tunat as the golden child I once envied, but as the sister who grew with me, who learned to share the frame. And I see myself not as the shadow or the candid, not as the girl with the plates, but as the narrator of my own story. My mom once told me I shouldn't be in photos. But the truth is, the picture was never complete without me. And when I finally arrived with my surprise guest, the frame was too big to ever crop again. And that was my story. A lifetime of being cropped out until I finally stepped into the frame. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe if you haven't already. And turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next tale of family, betrayal, and justice served. And now, I'd love to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time, remember, the truth always finds its way into the picture.